All right, so in this discussion, I'm going to go over consumption and materialism. I really like this cartoon, so go ahead and press pause, and I want you to think about what it means with regards to our consumption of goods. And this is really kind of hits the nail on the head in that, in this cartoon, you have each person here standing on a pile of waste, which is meant to symbolize the stuff that they're buying and using and throwing away. And each person is looking at someone else. So this person is looking at this person and saying, well, I don't use as much as them. And this person is saying, I don't use as much as them, and so on. And so the point here is that we can always find someone that's consuming more, wasting more, buying more than we are. But we have to keep in mind to, sort of in this example, kind of look the other way and realize that there are a lot of people that are using way less than us. So it's all relative, and it's important to keep that perspective. And so in this first part, I'm going to go over focus on a video called The High Price of Materialism, go over these key things. What are consumption and materialism? What impact does materialism have on sustainability? What role does advertising play in materialism? And also, ultimately, how do we reduce materialism? So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to play 3 advertisements. So I want you to take out a piece of paper, and I just want you to jot down what you think this advertisement is trying to tell you. Okay, so what's the message, whether it's a blatant message, a subliminal, something that, what is it trying to actually tell you about the product, okay? So go ahead and jot those down, and we'll discuss them at a later point in this presentation. Okay, so here's the first one.
Well, hello, is this thing on? Is anybody listening? A brand new day has begun. Come on, let me on, it's a brand new day. Open up a little happiness today. So I can be someone, so I can be.
Okay, here's the second one.
Only at Toys R Us. Share the fun with your friends. Share the music. Share the magic. Share the love. When you share your dream come true, the dream house is more fun for you. Share the dream house with your friends, Barbie girl. You can get it now, but only at Toys R Us. Barbie 3-story dream house set. You put it together, dolls, fashion, and
Okay,
batteries.
there we go. All right, and then we'll go to the third here. All right, so here's the third one.
I believe in the future.
In the future.
I believe in protecting the environment.
I believe in energy independence.
I believe we can limit greenhouse gases and keep energy cost affordable.
I believe in technology.
I believe in American ingenuity.
I believe that meeting a challenge
Brings out the best in us.
We will do this.
I believe.
I believe.
I believe.
We can be energy independent. We can continue to use our most abundant fuel cleanly and responsibly. We can, we will. Clean coal, America's power.
Okay, so there's that one. All right, so let me get back to the PowerPoint here. So again, the key here is I wanted you to think about and jot down what do you think they're really telling you. Okay, so not necessarily what the advertisement is blatantly telling you, but kind of the messaging that they're giving you there. Okay, so this module is about consumption and materialism. So the first thing we need to do is define these 2 terms. So consumption in this case refers to the use and purchase of goods and services. So consumption is just a general term for basically any time you buy something and use it, okay? So it really has to do with buying, economic activity. Materialism is it can be thought of as the desire to accumulate possessions as a form of wealth. So consumption is basically just when you buy and use things, okay? Materialism, I think we know what a materialistic person is, and it's someone that really has this drive. They really are materialistic. They really want stuff. Like they place a really high value on the things that they own. They want the nicest, the newest, this, that, and the other thing, the nicest car, nicest house, nicest clothes, and so forth. So materialism is this drive, like this really heavy focus on acquiring the stuff. Okay, so it's really like your self-worth largely is derived from what you own. Okay, so consumption and materialism are 2 important terms here. Okay, so This video was posted on in your lesson. Okay, so if you have not watched it yet, go ahead and do that now. You can go to the lesson, or you can go to the PDF that's posted with the lesson and click on the video. But it's really important that you watch this video before you move on. So go ahead and do that now. Okay, so this is one of my I guess it's one of my favorite videos that has a sustainability theme that I found on the internet. It's just packed full of a lot of things, and we're just going to unpack it a little bit and go through some highlights. So the narrator starts off stating that there's this common notion that the good life is attainable through the goods life. And so what does he mean by that? And really what he means is there's this, whether it's something that's conscious or subconscious, we sort of have this belief that stuff is going to make us happy, right? So we buy if we get nicer clothes or we have a nicer car or whatever, that it's going to make us happy, okay? So whether or not this is a conscious belief that people have, it is, I think we can all agree that it is very much sort of permeates our society, particularly in Western cultures, in the United States. It's this, we're sort of led to believe through advertising and social influences that if we have nice things that we're going to be happy, okay? And so that's actually a really common, I don't think a very controversial notion. Okay, and so this leads us into that first advertisement that we watched from Coca-Cola. So we're going to watch that again, and we're going to kind of talk about, or I'll go over a few things, a few of the messages that they're portraying in here that sort of relates to this belief that stuff is going to make us happy, that certain physical things and characteristics are going to make us happy. So let's go over that again. Okay.
Well, hello, is this thing on? Is anybody listening? A brand new day has begun.
Okay, so just for starters here, we're halfway into the commercial here, 12 seconds into a 30-second commercial, and this is the first appearance of Coca-Cola. So that's the first kind of clue. It's most of the video, if you notice, doesn't really involve Coca-Cola directly. It does. I mean, they're having fun sharing a Coca-Cola, but you notice that they're painting this picture of these key, sort of touchstones that are really common: youth, beauty, a relaxing environment. Show all these young people having a good time. They're all skinny and, I would say objectively speaking, they're attractive. They're obviously young. And so the point here is that they are trying, so Coca-Cola, what they're doing is they want you to associate these things that are desirable. So these are all pretty much, physical things. And they want you to associate those things with Coca-Cola. Okay, so let's keep going here. So, interesting in that, yes, they are, they are sharing Coca-Cola in there, but I submit to you that there's very little that's happening in this commercial that actually has to do with Coke, right? I mean, what Coca-Cola has to do with, floating in a giant inflatable bottle in the middle of the ocean, I don't know. I think it's kind of weird that they spray each other with Coca-Cola. It doesn't seem like a good time to me. But anyway, the whole point here is that not only are they trying to associate these things that are desirable with Coca-Cola, even though they, I wouldn't say that being young and skinny, for example, has very much to do with drinking, a sugary beverage. But also, it's really interesting that this one is more blatant than most other commercials, in that the tagline is actually "open happiness," right? So they're actually trying to directly correlate Coca-Cola with happiness. So it's kind of unusual to have a product that tries to directly, so blatantly tie themselves to happiness, but that's really what that's really the message here. Some of it's, blatant, okay, so very direct. Most of it's subliminal. If you drink Coke, you'll be happy. You just associate Coca-Cola with all these happy things, okay? And so, okay, so Going further into the high price of materialism video. By the way, these graphics, if you notice in the video, are really they tell a really strong story. Just the graphics themselves, in addition to the narration. So I do suggest that you take a look at the drawings as well. Okay, so anyway, the narrator also mentions that people tend to end up organizing their lives around higher salaries and owning more stuff. So again, the message that we receive is that things are going to make us happy. So if we work hard, we buy more stuff, that we'll be happy. But it sort of leads us to this materialistic impulses. I mean, that's kind of the definition of materialism, the belief that we can have, as we have more stuff, as we get more stuff, we'll be more happy. But a lot of the research shows, and again, I do suggest they do provide links to the research in that video, that as materialism increases, happiness decreases. And we'll go over this in the next lesson when we talk about the treadmill of consumption. But I want you to think about why. I mean, if what drives you is having the nicest stuff, right? So you always have to have the latest and greatest, right? And so if that's what makes you happy, okay, it's not internal, it's something that you own. So what happens when, okay, so you have a nice wardrobe and you have a nice car and you have a nice house. What happens next year when your clothes are slightly out of fashion, your iPhone is, one version off, your house isn't quite as nice as the neighbors and so forth. So I think we all know that fashions change all the time. It's really hard to keep up. And so the problem is if what makes you happy is having the nicest and newest stuff, the newest things, it's a constant struggle to actually achieve that because you can never quite catch up. There's always a nicer, more expensive whatever pair of pants, there's a more expensive watch, there's a more expensive purse out there. So it's like this never-ending pursuit, and you never quite achieve your goal. And we'll discuss that in more detail when we talk about the treadmill of consumption. But it's if I think you probably all know people that are somebody that's pretty materialistic, and at least from my experience, people that I know that are very materialistic, they tend to be really insecure and they're just not as happy. Whereas people that if you know anybody that's really just doesn't really care about what other people think, the stuff that they have, they tend to be a little more happy. And now this is, again, the research does bear this out. And so I think it's kind of common sense that if this is what drives you, that it's kind of it's easy for that to lead to unhappiness, okay, or lack of happiness. Okay. So again, this image here that they have in the video, go ahead and press pause and think about what the image means, and they actually mention what it means. Okay, and so the graphic here it's meant to be a seesaw. Okay, so as materialism goes up, pro-social behavior goes down. Okay, and so again, research shows that as materialistic values go up, basically as people become more materialistic, okay, their pro-social behavior goes down. So, pro-social just means, treating other people well, okay? So you can think of it as the opposite of antisocial, right? So if you're antisocial, then you don't treat people well. You're not good to other people. And that's what a lack of pro-social behavior impulses means. And again, to be very clear, this is not to pick on anyone or say that anybody that, likes to have nice stuff is antisocial. What it means is as you're more and more focused on being materialistic, it tends to reduce your pro-social behavior. And again, I think this is pretty commonsensical. Someone that's really focused on money and stuff, they're more likely to not really care what happens to people, because if their main goal is really to get, to make more money, to get more things, then it's a lot easier to sort of ignore the negative impacts on people. Okay, basically the same relationship exists between materialism and nature and environmental values or care for nature. So again, as people materialistic impulses increase, they focus more on material goods, their care for their concern for the environment tends to decrease. And again, this I think is common sense. Someone that's really focused on having things and having nice things is less likely to focus on the environment. Again, to be very clear, this doesn't mean that everybody that likes nice stuff or has a nice car or has a big house doesn't care about the environment, but overall, as your materialist or focus on material goods increases, your concern for nature tends to decrease. And again, this is borne out by the research as well. Okay. And so again, the concern with money, image, status, these materialistic impulses correlates with lower pro-environmental behavior. Okay, and so there are some clear sustainability implications. Again, for the focus of this lesson is materialism and consumption. So as you focus on materialism, your consumption tends to increase, and so your pro-environmental behavior tends to decrease, your pro-social behavior tends to decrease, and also from the third E perspective, the economy. You may think this is good for the economy, and it is good for the economy, but remember, economy from the 3E perspective refers more to quality of life than it does to economic activity. And so as if you recall that as materialism goes up, happiness tends to decrease. So that's actually not good for quality of life, which is our third E. So it's really bad for all 3 E's. The more materialism that exists in society, generally speaking, it's bad for all 3 E's for the most part. Okay, so the sort of bottom line here is that materialism leads to some bad things. And so what do we do about it? All right, and so they do offer some solutions in here. So the first thing they say is figure out what leads to materialistic values and reduce it. All right, and so insecurity tends to make people focus on material things. So again, back to my earlier point, people that are materialistic, they do tend to be pretty insecure. Now that's kind of a chicken and an egg thing here. They're insecure, so they focus on material things, and it's sort of like this spiral. Each of those two impulses sort of support each other. But insecurity does tend to make people focus on material things. And again, I think this is common sense. If you know someone that's insecure, it's a lot easier to feel secure if you have, well, internally I don't feel secure, so I'm going to get really nice stuff, and so people will be sort of impressed by me and so forth, and that's sort of buys yourself some security. So it's not a stretch to believe that. And there also research shows that exposure to media leads to prioritizing material value. So we kind of put these two and two together, right? So exposure to media leads to materialistic impulses, and insecurity leads people to focus on material things. And so the connection here is that media tends to make people insecure, okay? And so the goal, the solution to, one solution to reducing materialistic values is to reduce media exposure, okay? And so I'm going to go back to one of the original commercials that we watched, and so I want you to think about what it's sort of, who the message is targeted toward, and what the message is. Okay.
Now only at Toys R Us. Share the fun with your friends. Share the music.
Okay. So let's stop it here. So this advertisement is obviously targeted at preteen, whatever. Let's say 8-year-old girls. And so just this image here, what sort of subliminal message is it sending them? So I want you to press pause and think about this, or the materialistic, or the message it's giving these girls about body image and what you should quote unquote look like. And things that jump out to me here, obviously very thin. You can even from here in this old non-HD commercial, you can see they have a lot of makeup on, they have nice clothes, you're sort of like somewhat scantily dressed. I mean, again, these are targeted 8-year-olds. If this was, for teenagers or adults, whatever, but they're creating this this picture of what women should look like, and these, this is being targeted at really young girls. So it's obviously, these girls are very fashionable, have a lot of makeup and so forth, right? I mean, I don't know. Sorry, I just have to pause it here. I just think it's kind of hilarious that they show her flushing a toilet. It's kind of weird, and it, I don't know if it's just me, but it looks like kind of a provocative pose here. But anyway, you can see all the makeup here, lipstick, eyeshadow, all that stuff, hair and fashion. You got the little half shirt and the skirt on. I mean, it is fairly provocative for an 6 to 8 year old. Again, it's kind of funny they're doing laundry. I don't know if that's deliberate messaging, like gender roles and so forth, but I find it a little bit weird. And again, it's it's a pretty big elaborate house. We got 3 stories. We got the spiral staircase. So it's portraying body image. First of all, it's very clear in here that these girls they're being told you should be thin, you should have long hair, you should wear a lot of makeup, you should wear kind of fashionable, sort of somewhat provocative clothes. So they are being told that they need to look like this. I know it seems kind of extreme, but this is only one example of basically any advertisement out there features unusually attractive people. It's especially tough for women. I mean, the body, the expectations for what the quote unquote ideal woman or the attractive woman is supposed to look like is really unattainable for most people. And so the whole point here is that they are at a very early age being told that this is what you should look like, and by being exposed to this imagery all the time as they get older, and if you don't look like that, you become more insecure. Again, this is not every single person is subject to it, but it is really common. It's a huge problem, especially for women, because again, this ideal like female look is really hard to obtain for most women. So they end up being like, well, I don't look, even if they don't think about it consciously, they think subconsciously, well, I don't look like all these actresses and models and so forth out there, and it creates this level of insecurity, which advertisers know this, by the way. They know that this drives insecurity, and they want you to be like, okay, well, if I get this dream house, if I get this makeup, if I get these clothes, I buy this Coca-Cola, whatever, I can be like that. I mean, that is the message that they are trying to give to you, and it's really rampant. Okay, and so it's all over the place, and it's really common to see that type of imagery. And I think we all know that when you look at commercials, that's what you see. You see people that are unnaturally attractive. Okay, so let's look at another one here. All right, so see if you can guess what this commercial is about before the end. All right.
I've always had a love affair with food. I think I've tasted every flavor imaginable. But there's something about the Western bacon. It reminds me of being in high school, sneaking out before dinner to savor that sweet, spicy sauce, and leaving no evidence behind.
The Hardee's Western Bacon Thick Burger, more than just a piece.
Okay, so where do we begin with this one? I don't even, it's hard to even imagine the connection here. So this is for Hardee's, a fast food place, not even a very good one at that. We could go into a lot of detail here. The main message here is that this is pretty typical. Now this is kind of an extreme example, and Hardee's is kind of notorious for this, of this body image that's portrayed in mass media. You see it everywhere. You can't even watch a fast food commercial without being exposed to this unusually attractive woman that she's eating fast food. I mean, so we're inundated by this imagery all the time. So women see this, and whether they're consciously or subconsciously, they notice, well, I don't look like that. I mean, most women don't look like that. So that's a problem. It's also a problem because then you have men see that commercial, and that creates this image like, oh, this is what an attractive woman should look like. And so it reinforces that body image that, again, is unattainable to 99.99% of women in the world. And it's just really common, and it's everywhere, and it's really hard to escape, right? And so again, exposure to mass media tends to increase insecurity, and this is, a major reason why. Okay. And so you can think of it as, I think of it as advertisers basically selling you unhappiness. They try to make you unhappy by, showing you what you're not or what you don't have, and to make you believe that if you support them, buy their product, that you can look like that or you can achieve that. And there's a lot of research that has been done on this. I'll just cite a few studies here. So there was a study at the University of Central Florida that was done a few years back, and they polled 3 to 6 year old girls, 3 to 6 years old. Nearly half of them worried about being fat, and about a third of them wanted to change something about their body. This is the last thing that a 3 to 6 year old should be thinking about. They shouldn't care at all. But they're at a very, very early age, they're taught, they're socialized to believe that they need to worry about their weight, they need to worry about their clothes, they need to worry about something, change something about themselves. I mean, it's terrible, and it starts really young, and it's actually been starting, advertisers have been targeting younger and younger girls over time. There was a study, and it was detailed in Glamour magazine. It was done by a well-regarded researcher, though, that the average woman has an average of 13 negative body thoughts daily. And the kind of kicker is that it did not matter what they look like or their actual body size. So whether they were overweight, underweight, whatever the correct body mass, proportion, whatever, it doesn't matter. Irrespective of the size or the shape, they still had negative thoughts about their body. It is absolutely pounded into our heads, especially women. It's much less of a problem with men. Women are inundated all the time. It's pounded into your head that you are not attractive enough, that you should change this, you should change that. I mean, go look at a magazine rack. Look at how many magazines have diet or how to look better, how to look, pictures of actresses and models and whatever. Like, how did they get so skinny? Look at how skinny she is after she had a baby 1 month ago. I mean, it's just constant inundation, and it really has an impact, especially on women. And it creates this insecurity, which again it does contribute to materialistic impulses. Okay, so the first solution to reducing materialism is the short story is reduce exposure to media. Okay, so whether it's pressing mute when a commercial comes on, using television services that don't have media, not watching television. Okay, so reduce your exposure to media is one way to do it. The second way to promote it, to reduce materialistic impulses, is to promote things that reduce materialistic impulses. And so one really good way to do that is to promote intrinsic values. Okay, so if intrinsic just means you derive your self-worth from within, from who you are, not what you have or what you look like. Okay, and so I thought it was really good the way you put it. You can immunize people against materialism. So it's like immunizing, like if you immunize someone against a disease or whatever, it's sort of preventing that disease from kicking in or hurting that person. And so if you can help people become more secure, have more intrinsic value, okay, so intrinsic, their own self-worth is derived from who they are, then they don't care as much about what they have or what they look like or what people think about them. So that's another way to do it. As I say, build a life filled with value. Okay, so engage in things that don't require materialistic or material goods to achieve, right? So volunteering, self-improvement, meaningful work, and so forth. Right, so promote intrinsic values. So there are actually policies out there. France and Bhutan, he mentions, have actually, the federal governments of those countries have sought to promote ways to increase intrinsic values and national happiness and so forth. So feel free to look up some of that research if you'd like. So the overall key points here are that advertisers want us to believe that stuff will make us happy, okay? And that insecurity makes people focus on materialism, and media fosters insecurity. So we really need to reduce exposure to media. Materialism tend to reduce pro-social and reduce ecological behavior. So we want to reduce materialism. And the two solutions to this are reduce media exposure and advocate for policies that promote intrinsic values, and just in general promote intrinsic values. Okay, we'll stop there.